She walked into the restaurant with only $40 in her purse and a heart full of hope. For 15 minutes, she waited. Then 30, by 45. The truth hit her phone. I was never coming. Her chest locked, eyes burning, but she refused to cry. Not here, not tonight. And just as she stood to leave, a plate of food appeared before her, paid in full. A stranger's voice whispered, "It's not charity. You deserve to eat." What happened next changed everything. The bell above the door gave a single chime. For most people, it was a polite sound. But for Claire Dawson, it rang like a spotlight announcing her arrival. She froze for half a beat, then forced herself inside. The restaurant was called Maple and Stone, a mid-range bistro tucked in a busy corner of downtown Denver. Not the fanciest place, not the cheapest either. But for Claire, who'd spent weeks calculating her budget, it was the nicest table she had ever dared to sit at. She tugged down the hem of her vintage dress. It was pearl-colored, a little frayed at the seams. It had belonged to her mother, worn only on rare occasions. Tonight it was her armor, her proof that maybe she still deserved something better. The hostess glanced up with a polite smile. "Reservation for Claire." Claire nodded quickly. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Yes, Dawson, that's me." The hostess led her toward a small table by the window. A single candle flickered there, fighting against the soft shadows. Claire sat with care, purse clutched on her lap, knees pressed together under the table. She checked the time. 6:45 p.m. 15 minutes early. She exhaled slowly, trying to believe that tonight, this one night, might be different. At a table across the room, Lucas Bennett stirred the amber in his glass. The man looked like he belonged to another world. Charcoal blue suit, expensive watch, shoulders heavy with responsibility. Lucas had just walked out of a long day of meetings at Everhart Foods, the company he'd built and now carried like a second skin. But the tension of work didn't sit with him now. His gaze had settled on the young woman at the window. There was something about her, hesitant yet stubborn, that drew his attention. Lucas wasn't in the habit of watching strangers, but tonight, he couldn't look away. Meanwhile, Claire rehearsed lines in her head, the kind of light conversation you practiced before a first date. "So, you like hiking? Me too. Your pictures looked fun." She smiled at the memory of his last message. It had been short, but sweet. "Can't wait to see you tonight." That had been 5 hours ago. The words still glowed on her screen like a promise. Minutes ticked by. 7 Huzra came, then 7:05. Claire sipped water, pretending she wasn't counting each passing second. Her fingers tightened around the napkin in her lap. At 7:15, she finally sent a text. "Hey, I'm here, just checking in." She stared at the screen. No reply. The waiter approached her table gently. "Would you like to order something to start?" Claire forced a smile. "Oh, I'll wait just a little longer." Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Inside her purse was a folded $5 bill. Her emergency backup. Enough for tea, not enough for dinner. By 7:30, her chest felt heavy. She tapped the call button. The line rang once, then cut to voicemail. No answer. The truth crawled over her skin like ice. She was alone. Again. Her phone buzzed at last. She snatched it up with relief. Relief that shattered the moment she read the words. "Wow. You actually went. I was just messing with you. Not worth the Uber." Claire blinked hard. Another text arrived. Crueler than the first. "You seem nice, but come on. You thought I was actually coming." The restaurant noise blurred. Silverware clinked. Glasses chimed. Laughter drifted from nearby tables. But for Claire, it all collapsed into static. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers curled into the napkin, refusing to cry. Not here, not in front of strangers. She straightened her back like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Invisible. Unwanted. From across the room, Lucas saw it all. He didn't hear the words on her phone, but he didn't need to. He saw the hope drain from her face. He saw her spine stiffen, bracing against the blow. He recognized it, because once, years ago, he had felt it too. The sting of waiting for someone who never showed. Claire shifted in her seat, pressing her hand gently against her stomach. She hadn't eaten all day. She was hungry in every possible way. Her eyes flicked toward the server's station. She calculated how long she could stay before someone asked her to leave. Finally, she reached for her coat, slowly, as if every movement weighed more than it should. The server appeared then, carrying a steaming plate of pasta and a tall glass of sparkling lemonade. "Here you go, miss." Claire blinked, confused. I didn't order anything. It was taken care of," the server said kindly. "Your tab has been covered." Her first instinct was fear. Was this another trick, another cruel joke? She froze, eyes darting around the room. And then, a calm voice came from just behind her. "It's not charity," the man said. "It's a reminder. You deserve to eat." Claire turned slowly. The man in the suit stood there, steady and unhurried. He pulled out the chair across from her, set one hand on the back, and sat down. No invitation asked, no apology given. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The candle flickered between them, lighting the table with fragile warmth. Lucas leaned forward, his voice low. "Take care of your stomach before you try to take care of someone else's heart." Claire stared at him, stunned. Not a pickup line, not an insult, just the truth, spoken gently. And it hit deeper than anything she'd ever heard. She looked down at the plate. The food smelled rich and comforting, but her hands stayed folded in her lap. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "I know," he replied. Silence stretched. Not awkward, just honest. She studied him quickly. The tailored suit, the understated watch. He looked expensive, untouchable. The kind of man who belonged to another world. But his face was calm, curious, kind. "You don't even know me," she said quietly. "True," he answered, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I saw enough." "And what exactly did you see?" she asked, wary but curious. Lucas rested his elbows on the table. "I saw someone who showed up. Someone who hoped. Someone who waited longer than she should have. Not because she was desperate, but because she believed." Claire's throat tightened. Her chest ached at the words. People had always called her naive, soft, too hopeful for her own good. But this stranger, this man she had just met, had called her brave without saying the word. She picked up the fork, hands trembling, and took the first bite. Warm, real. The first proper meal she'd had in days. Lucas leaned back, watching just long enough before looking away. "I didn't mean to interfere," he said softly. "But you reminded me of someone I used to be." Claire glanced up. And who is that? A guy who thought he needed to be somebody else to be worth showing up for. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, understanding. She still felt small, still out of place. But with him sitting there calm, steady, not mocking her, it felt like she was allowed to exist, to eat, to breathe, to be seen. The plate emptied slowly, but the weight in her chest stayed full. Full of words she didn't know how to say. When Lucas finally stood, he didn't ask for her number, didn't make a move. He simply slid a small card across the table. "I come here often, for coffee, not company." And then, with a faint nod, he walked away. Claire stared at the card in silence. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. No pressure, no expectation. Just a reminder, left behind by a stranger, that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been invisible after all. The card stayed in Claire's purse for days. Sometimes she touched it absent-mindedly, as if to make sure it hadn't vanished. She told herself she wouldn't use it. She told herself it meant nothing. But the memory of that plate of pasta, warm, undeserved, unforgettable, lingered in the back of her mind. A week later, on a cold Thursday morning, she pushed open the door of a tiny cafe near campus. The smell of roasted beans wrapped around her like a blanket. Claire counted coins in her palm, enough for a small black coffee. Her shift at the library had run late, and she hadn't eaten breakfast. The barista greeted her with a smile. Before Claire could order, a voice behind her spoke. "Make that 2, and add oat milk to hers." Her head snapped up. In the corner, seated with a laptop open, was the same man from the restaurant, Lucas Bennett. Suit jacket draped on the chair, sleeves rolled, expression calm. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not a coffee shop. Yet here he was, smiling faintly at her surprise. Claire froze. "You remembered my name. I remembered your courage." Lucas replied, "Names are the easy part." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, the barista set down a warm cup in front of her. Claire hesitated only a second before walking to his table. She sat down across from him, heart pounding. The cafe was busy, filled with chatter and clinking cups. But at that small corner table, it felt strangely quiet. Lucas leaned back, studying her without judgment. "You work around here?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," he said. "One of our research partners is just down the street." Claire nodded, unsure how to keep the conversation alive. But Lucas rescued the silence with an unexpected confession. "You know, I completely botched a product launch last month." She blinked, startled. "We tried a new toddler snack line," he continued, "and the slogan made it sound like we were selling gum to babies." Claire laughed, an actual, unguarded laugh. The sound surprised even her. Lucas grinned. "An influencer tore us apart online. Memes, hashtags, the works." He shook his head with mock defeat. It was brutal. The heaviness that had weighed on her all week lifted just a little. There was no pity in his voice, no awkward references to that night at the restaurant. He wasn't a CEO talking down. He was just a man sharing a mistake. For once, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. They spoke for nearly an hour. About coffee preferences, about strange childhood snacks, about the time Claire tried to cut her own bangs with safety scissors. Lucas listened intently, chuckling at the right moments. But when she stood to leave, he didn't press her to stay. No number asked, no invitation offered, just a simple nod of respect. And strangely, that felt better than any promise. The following week, Claire found herself in a crowded conference room, rows of folding chairs, slides projected across the screen. The event was a workshop on child nutrition hosted by Everhart Foods. She'd never have been able to afford the ticket, but 3 days earlier, she'd received a text. "Thought this might interest you. No pressure. Fees waived." Lucas, she almost didn't go. But curiosity and something else she refused to name won out. Claire sat in the third row, pen poised, cardigan wrapped tight around her scrubs. She looked out of place among the pediatricians and young professionals in tailored suits. The presenter launched into slides on preservatives, allergens, and packaging safety. Claire scribbled notes, her brows furrowing deeper with every bullet point. Then she raised her hand. Her voice wavered, but her question cut sharp. "Are the preservative levels in toddler snacks within safe limits for daily intake?" The room stilled. The presenter blinked, then nodded slowly. "That's a great question." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Claire's cheeks burned, but she didn't stop there. 10 minutes later, she raised her hand again. "Why isn't the allergy labeling consistent with federal guidelines?" This time, the presenter actually paused his slide. "That's another excellent observation." Eyes turned toward her, some surprised, some impressed. Claire sank back in her chair, clutching her pen like a shield. At the back of the room, Lucas watched quietly. He didn't step in, didn't speak for her. He simply observed. Not as a CEO evaluating talent, but as a man recognizing sincerity. Because Claire wasn't asking to look smart. She was asking because she cared, and that, to him, mattered more than anything. When the session ended, people crowded the snack table, trading business cards and resumes. Claire slipped out quietly, notebook tucked to her chest. The late afternoon sun stretched across the street as she headed toward the library. Her safe place, her escape. She didn't expect to see him again that day. But fate had other plans. The library's glass doors creaked open, and there he was, Lucas Bennett, standing in the children's corner. A tiny girl in a yellow sweater dress clung to his leg. Claire froze, the sight stealing her breath. For the first time, she realized what she hadn't known before. The CEO, the stranger, the man who had quietly paid for her dinner, was a father. "Hey," Lucas said softly, guiding the child behind him. "Wasn't sure I'd see you here." Claire lifted the books in her arms. "Just returning these." Her eyes shifted to the little girl peeking out from behind his legs. Big brown eyes, curly hair tied back with a ribbon. "This is Lily," he said. "She's 4, a little shy." Claire crouched, lowering herself to the child's level. "Hi, Lily." The girl hesitated, then stepped forward. Her tiny hand brushed the hem of Claire's cardigan. "She's pretty," Lily whispered. Claire chuckled gently. "And you're beautiful." The moment held. Then Lily leaned close, sniffing the air near Claire's shoulder. "She smells like Mommy." The world seemed to stop. Lucas's expression hardened, just for an instant. His jaw tightened, his hand gripping Lily's shoulder. Claire's heart clenched at the weight of unspoken loss. She knelt again, careful with her words. "Well, that's a big compliment," she said softly. "Your mommy must have smelled like kindness." Lily nodded seriously, then scampered off toward the picture books. Lucas stayed still, eyes distant, fighting something beneath the surface. Finally, he cleared his throat. "She passed away 2 years ago," he murmured. Lily doesn't usually say things like that. Claire's chest ached. Children remembered more than adults gave them credit for. They remembered with their hearts. Lucas met her gaze then, really met it. And for the first time, his eyes weren't guarded. For the first time, they were simply open. The library moment haunted Claire all evening. The little girl's words echoed in her chest. "She smells like Mommy." She replayed the way Lucas's hand had trembled, the way his eyes had faltered before he found his composure. It wasn't pity she felt, it was something deeper. Days passed before they crossed paths again. This time, Lucas called, not for business, not for coffee, but because his nanny had canceled last minute. "Would you mind picking Lily up from daycare?" he asked, voice hesitant. "She already knows you. It might help." Claire almost said no. Her schedule was tight. But something in his tone, the quiet plea of a father, made her agree. When she arrived at the daycare, Lily's face lit up. The little girl barreled into her arms, clinging tight. Claire smoothed her hair, heart swelling. No child had ever trusted her so quickly. They walked hand in hand to Lucas's townhouse, a modest brick building on a quiet Denver street. Inside smelled faintly of lemon and pine. Neat, but lived in. Toys tucked into corners, picture frames carefully placed. Lucas met them at the door. Tie loosened. "Thank you," he said, relief in his voice. "It's fine," Claire replied. Honestly, I think she was excited. Lily tugged at Claire's sleeve. "Read me 2 books." Claire smiled. Always 2, never 1. It became their unspoken ritual. Tuesdays and Thursdays, When the nanny was busy, Claire stepped in. She braided Lily's hair, cooked macaroni in the small kitchen, read bedtime stories until the little girl's eyes fluttered shut. Lucas often worked at the dining table, laptop open, but every so often, he'd glance toward the couch, watching the way Claire's presence softened the room. One Thursday evening, Claire arrived to find chaos. Papers scattered across the floor, Lucas pacing with a phone pressed to his ear. Lily lay on the couch, cheeks flushed pink. Her small body shivered under a thin blanket. Lucas's voice cracked with worry. Fever spiked again. Yes, I'll keep monitoring. Claire stepped in gently. Let me help. She set her canvas bag on the counter, pulling out supplies. A cool towel wrapped in wax paper, a small pouch of dried lavender. Lucas stared, bewildered. What's that? A trick I learned at the hospital, she said softly. Lavender helps calm the head and the heart. She pressed the cool towel against Lily's forehead. The little girl sighed in relief, eyes fluttering closed. Then, without thinking, Claire began to hum, a melody low and gentle, almost a whisper. Lucas froze. His chest tightened. He knew that tune. It was the lullaby his late wife used to sing. A folk song, altered with nonsense lines. Words silly enough to make Lily giggle when she was still a toddler. Now, 2 years later, Claire sang it perfectly. Every note, every pause. Lucas's knees buckled, and he sank into the armchair. His hands covered his face as tears broke free. Claire faltered, realizing too late. I didn't know. He shook his head quickly. You couldn't have. His voice was raw, ragged. She sang that every night. I thought Lily had forgotten. Claire looked down at the girl resting peacefully on her lap. Her tiny chest rose and fell in rhythm with the melody. Children don't forget love, Claire whispered. They just wait to hear it again. Lucas lowered his hand slowly. His eyes glistened, his jaw trembling. The walls he carried began to crack. They didn't speak further. Didn't need to. Claire stayed until Lily's fever broke. She tucked the blanket tighter around her, then leaned her head against the back of the couch. Lucas sat nearby, silent, still shaken. But for the first time in years, he wasn't alone with his grief. The following days carried a subtle shift. Lucas started calling Claire not as a backup, but as a first choice. Her presence no longer felt like a favor. It felt like part of the rhythm. At the office, he invited her opinion on slide decks and product drafts. Her questions cut deeper than any consultant's. Would a mom trust this? Would a nurse sign off on that? He found himself relying on her perspective. Not because she was an expert, but because she cared. For Claire, the changes were quieter. Her shifts at the library still stretched late. Her classes still drained her energy. But now, between textbooks and night shifts, there was laughter. There was spaghetti night at Lucas's kitchen table. There was Lily's small voice asking, "You'll come back tomorrow." And Claire found herself saying yes, again and again. One evening, as they packed up crayons after dinner, Lily asked innocently, "Are you going to stay forever?" Claire's hand paused on the table. Her throat tightened. Lucas glanced at her quickly, then back at his daughter. "Let's not pressure her, sweet pea." But Claire smiled softly. "I'll stay as long as you want me to." Later, when Lily was tucked in, Lucas lingered at the doorway. "You didn't have to say that," he murmured. "I know," she admitted, "but I meant it." Their eyes met. The weight of unspoken things hanging between them. A bond growing fragile, yet undeniable. It wasn't love yet. Not in the way movies described, but it was trust. It was presence. It was 3 people slowly stitching their lives together. And though none of them said it aloud, the truth was clear. They were no longer strangers orbiting separate worlds. They were quietly, steadily becoming a family. The letter arrived in a plain white envelope. No stamps of celebration, no confetti tucked inside. Just her name printed neatly across the front, Claire Dawson. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at it for a full 5 minutes. Her fingers finally tore it open. Her eyes scanned the page once, then again, then again. She whispered out loud, as if the words needed to be real. Full tuition, 1-year pediatric program, Oregon. It was everything she had prayed for, everything she had worked toward through endless nights at the library. And yet her chest felt heavy, not light, because it meant leaving. Leaving the townhouse with its lemon-scented hallways. Leaving bedtime stories and macaroni dinners. Leaving Lily. Leaving Lucas. Her joy twisted into dread. For the first time, her dream felt like a betrayal. She waited 3 days before telling him. They met at the park, Lily chasing bubbles that floated high in the September air. Claire held the folded letter in her coat pocket, the edges already worn from fidgeting. Her voice finally broke through the silence. "I got the scholarship," she said softly. Lucas turned to her, eyebrows raised. "That's incredible." She nodded, eyes dropping to the grass. "It's in Oregon. Starts in August, a whole year." The wind stirred, scattering golden leaves around their feet. Lily squealed, chasing after them, for a long moment. Lucas said nothing. Claire braced for disappointment, for anger, for guilt. But his voice was calm. "You should go." Her head jerked up. "You think so?" He nodded once. "You earned it." "But what if it looks like I'm walking away? Just when things got good?" Her voice cracked under the weight of the fear. "Like I used you for stability and now I'm done." Lucas's face softened. His eyes met hers with quiet steadiness. "Loving someone doesn't mean holding them tight," he said. "It means not clipping their wings." The words hit deeper than she expected. They settled in her chest, painful yet freeing. Claire swallowed hard. She wanted to speak, but Lily ran toward them then, chasing one last bubble. The moment dissolved. The weeks passed in a blur of lasts. Last spaghetti dinner at the kitchen table. Last library trip with Lily perched between them. Every moment carried extra weight. As if marked in invisible ink, final. Claire packed slowly, folding scrubs and textbooks into a second-hand suitcase. Her mother's pearl-colored dress stayed on the hanger, untouched. The night before her flight, Lucas invited them both for dinner. The table was set with candles, simple pasta steaming in bowls. Lily insisted they eat by candlelight, fancy like a princess. Afterward, the little girl disappeared into her room. She returned proudly, holding a paper chain of construction paper links. "1 link for every week until you come back," she explained. "I'll cut one each Saturday." Claire's throat burned. She knelt down, hugging her tight. When it was time to say goodbye, Claire crouched at Lily's eye level. But before she could speak, the girl wrapped her arms around her neck. "You're not going far?" Lily whispered. "Daddy says hearts don't care about distance." Claire closed her eyes, pressing her cheek against Lily's hair. Tears finally broke free. She looked up at Lucas. He stood by the door, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable. No pleas, no ultimatums, just a steady, quiet understanding. And somehow, that hurt more than if he'd begged her to stay. The airport the next morning was a blur of announcements and rushing feet. Claire clutched her ticket like it might dissolve in her hands. She kept hearing his words. "Don't clip your wings." Her plane lifted off, carrying her west. Below, Denver shrank into patches of light and shadow. She told herself it was only a year, but her heart knew a year could change everything. Oregon was beautiful. Rainy streets, coffee shops that smelled like cinnamon, endless textbooks stacked on her desk. She threw herself into the program. Classes, clinicals, late-night study groups. Each day sharpened her skills. But each night felt hollow, because every routine was missing a little girl's laugh, and a man's steady presence at the kitchen table. Lucas texted occasionally, updates about Lily, pictures of crayon drawings taped to the fridge. One message read, "She still makes us read 2 books every night. Never one." Claire smiled at that one until her cheeks ached, but she never let herself call back. Distance had to mean discipline. Back in Denver, Lucas kept the rhythm: board meetings, product launches, school pickups. But there were cracks in the armor. At night, after Lily was asleep, he sometimes drafted messages, little notes he never sent, like, "She asked if your hair still smells like lavender, or dinner tastes quieter without you here." He deleted them every time, because wings weren't meant to be clipped. Months bled into seasons. Leaves turned to snow. Snow thawed into spring. Claire counted days with the paper chain Lily had given her. 1 link for every week. By July, only a handful remained. Her suitcase gathered dust in the corner, waiting to be filled again. And with each cut of paper, with each week closer to her return, one truth became undeniable. She wasn't leaving a dream behind in Denver. She was leaving a family. The hospital hallway looked familiar. The same sterile walls, the same steady hum of monitors. But this time, Claire wasn't an intern. She wasn't the girl waiting tables, or the student with $5 in her purse. She was a registered nurse, badge clipped proudly to her coat. Her program in Oregon was complete. A year of grueling nights and exams had finally led her back to Denver, stronger, steadier, but carrying the same ache in her chest. By noon, she'd finished orientation. A fellow nurse slipped an envelope into her hands. "There's an event this afternoon. You're invited." Claire frowned. The paper was thick, elegant. The words inside were simple: Everhart Foods, rooftop launch. 3:00 p.m. Her heart skipped. The name was unmistakable. Lucas, at 3 sharp. Claire stepped out of the elevator. The rooftop garden opened before her. Rows of white chairs, strings of lights swaying in the summer breeze. A long table displayed pastel-colored boxes. The design stopped her cold. On the side of each package was a soft silhouette. A woman cradling a child, spoon in hand. A quiet echo of the girl who once sat hungry at a table by the window. She stood frozen as voices buzzed around her. Investors shook hands. Staff smiled for photos. And then, across the crowd, his eyes found hers. Lucas. For a moment, the noise vanished. It was just him. Older, wearier, but somehow warmer than she remembered. He finished his speech with calm precision. Then he moved through the crowd, not pausing for congratulations, straight toward her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said quietly. Claire swallowed. "I wasn't sure you'd still remember me." His lips curved faintly. Impossible. They stood in silence, the city stretching wide below. Then Lucas reached into his pocket. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a show. He opened a small box, revealing a simple ring. No diamonds that screamed wealth. Just one stone, unassuming, steady. "I don't want to save you," he said. "I just want to stay, so you never have to eat alone again." Claire's breath caught. Tears brimmed, but didn't fall. Because this wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't rescue. It was choice. And for the first time in her life, she chose love not from fear, but from peace. She nodded once, sure and steady. A week later, they returned to where it had all begun. Maple and stone. The hostess recognized them instantly, leading them to a familiar corner. But this time, there were 3 chairs. Lucas pulled one out for Claire, then helped Lily into hers. The candle flickered, bread was set down, water poured, And the table that once held silence now held laughter. Claire glanced around the room. The same polished wood, the same hum of conversations. Except this time, she wasn't pretending not to fidget with her napkin. She wasn't waiting for someone who'd never arrive. She was sitting with the ones who had stayed. Lucas leaned closer, playful. Order everything you want tonight. Everything, she teased. Tonight we eat for the girl who once waited 45 minutes and still believed someone would show. Her eyes shimmered, but she laughed. You remember all of that? I remember you, he said simply. Just then, Lily tugged at her backpack. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper and spread it proudly on the table. It was a drawing. A little house with a yellow door. 3 stick figures sitting at a table with spaghetti. One tall with glasses, one with long blonde hair, one small with purple shoes. This is us, Lily said proudly. And that's spaghetti. Because Mommy Claire likes spaghetti. Claire's breath hitched. Her hand trembled as she traced the crayon lines. You drew this today? Lily nodded eagerly. Teacher said to draw our favorite thing. I picked dinner with you and Daddy. Silence swelled around the table. Not heavy, but full. The kind of silence that didn't need words. Claire looked at Lucas, the man who had once quietly slid a plate of pasta across a lonely table. The man who had let her leave. Even when it broke him. Her voice was steady now. You were never late, she whispered. I just needed to believe long enough to wait. Lucas reached across the table, lacing his fingers with hers. His eyes held hers without wavering. And for the first time, she knew she was exactly where she belonged. Outside, night settled over the city. But inside, at one small table with 3 chairs, something new had begun. Not a rescue, not a fairy tale, just a family chosen, imperfect and real. The candlelight flickered, laughter rippled from another table. And in the quiet center of it all, Claire whispered the truth she had carried for so long. Family isn't who shows up first. It's who stays until the end. Thank you for spending these moments with us, and for listening to this story all the way through. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you more stories that matter. Every click, every view, truly helps us continue this journey with you. Stay kind, stay hopeful, and may your days be filled with love that always stays.